I'm Mason, 29 years old, and yesterday, I watched my father throw my entire life onto the front lawn. But before I tell you how I made him regret every single second of that decision, please take a moment to drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, let me take you back to where this nightmare started. If you walked into the house on Maple Street 3 days ago, you would have seen a perfectly normal, middle-class American family. You'd see my father, Robert, sitting in his recliner, watching Fox News and complaining about the government. You'd see my younger brother, Caleb, eating a sandwich he didn't make, probably scrolling through Tinder or bragging on the phone about a business deal that didn't exist. And if you looked really closely, you might ask, "Hey, where's the older son? Where's Mason?" To find me, you'd have to go down, past the kitchen, past the laundry room, down the creaky wooden stairs into the basement. That was my domain, or rather, my cell. It was a Tuesday, around 2 p.m. The heat in Arizona was brutal, pushing 105 degrees outside. I was deep in code. I work as a senior software engineer for a tech firm based in Seattle. They pay me a very healthy salary, but since I work remotely, my family seems to think I just play video games all day. I had my noise-canceling headphones on, trying to fix a bug in a deployment that was due in an hour. The basement was cool, the only place in the house that was. I'd installed a separate mini-split AC unit down there with my own money 2 years ago because the central air didn't reach the basement, and my computers generated a lot of heat. Suddenly, the door at the top of the stairs banged open. Mason! I didn't hear him at first. I was in the zone. Thump, thump, thump. Heavy footsteps pounded down the stairs. I spun my chair around just as my father, Robert, stormed into my office space. He was red in the face, sweating, holding a crumpled electric bill in his fist. "Take those damn things off your ears when I'm talking to you," he roared. I slid the headphones down to my neck. "Dad, I'm working. I have a meeting in 20 minutes. "Working," he scoffed, using air quotes. "You're sitting on your butt staring at a screen. You know what work is? Work is sweating. Work is breaking your back. I worked at the plant for 30 years. That was work." I sighed. We had this conversation at least twice a week. "What do you want, Dad?" "I want to know why this," he shook the paper in my face, "is $300. It's July in Arizona, Dad. The AC is running." "Your AC is running." He pointed at the sleek white unit mounted on the wall above my monitors. "It's freezing down here. You're wasting power while your mother and I are sweating upstairs trying to save a buck." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Dad, I pay the electric bill. I pay the whole thing. You haven't paid a utility bill in 5 years. He froze. That was the trigger. Whenever I mentioned money, his pride flared up like a match thrown into gasoline. He hated that he needed me. He hated that his pension wasn't enough to cover the lifestyle he wanted to maintain. But instead of being grateful, he twisted it into dominance. "Oh, you pay the bill, do you?" He stepped closer, invading my personal space. He smelled like stale coffee and old aggression. "You think throwing a few bucks at the bills makes you the man of the house? This is my house, Mason. My name is on the mailbox. I put the roof over your head. You live here because I allow it. You understand." I looked him in the eye. I wanted to scream. I wanted to open the top drawer of my filing cabinet, pull out the deed, and shove it in his face. I wanted to say, "Actually, Dad, you haven't owned this house since the bank foreclosure 5 years ago. I own it. You are a guest." But I didn't. I bit my tongue. I thought about his heart condition. The doctor had said no severe shocks. "I understand, Dad," I said quietly. "I'll turn the AC down." "Turn it off," he commanded. "And get upstairs and help your mother bring in the groceries when she gets back. Make yourself useful." He turned and stomped back up the stairs, slamming the door behind him. I sat there in the silence, my heart pounding. I reached for the remote and turned the AC off. The heat from my server rack instantly started to fill the room. I wiped sweat from my forehead and looked at the clock. I had to finish this code. But the interruptions weren't over. 20 minutes later, the door opened again. This time, The footsteps were lighter, bouncier. Caleb. My brother Caleb is 25, the golden child. He was the high school quarterback, the prom king, the one who could do no wrong. He's also never held a job for longer than 6 months. He's always entrepreneuring, which is code for asking mom for money to start a business that inevitably fails. Yo, Maze, Caleb said, sliding down the banister. He was wearing a fresh polo shirt and expensive sneakers. Sneakers I knew he couldn't afford. I'm working, Caleb, I said, not turning around. Relax, bro. Just wanted to give you a heads up. He leaned against my desk, picking up a limited edition figurine I had on display and tossing it casually in his hand. Jessica and I were making some moves. Jessica was his girlfriend of 3 months. A nice enough girl, but she had no idea what she was getting into with Caleb. Good for you. I typed a line of code. What kind of moves? Well, he smirked, putting the figurine down a little too hard. She's pregnant. My hands stopped on the keyboard. I spun around. She's pregnant? Caleb, you guys have been dating for 12 weeks. You don't have a job. I have prospects, he snapped, his smile vanishing. And anyway, Mom and Dad are thrilled. They're finally going to have a grandkid. A legacy. Okay, I said, feeling a headache coming on. Congratulations. Really. But why are you telling me this right now? Because, he gestured around the basement. We're going to need space. Mom said Jessica can move in. We're going to need a nursery. And a playroom. I narrowed my eyes. And, Caleb smirked again. This basement is the biggest room in the house. It's perfect. It's quiet. It's got the separate AC. Mom thinks it would be better if you moved your little computer setup into the garage. The garage. The uninsulated, dusty, spider-filled garage that reached 120 degrees in the summer. No, I said flatly. Excuse me? I said no. This is my office. I need the temperature control for the equipment. I pay the mortgage. I stopped myself. I pay rent. I lied, sticking to the script I'd maintained for years. I pay enough rent to cover the whole mortgage. I'm not moving to the garage. Caleb laughed. It was a cold, mocking sound. You don't get it, do you? It's not a request. Mom and Dad want the baby to have the best. You're single, Mason. You don't need all the space just to play games and type on a keyboard. Be a good uncle. Sacrifice a little. I sacrifice every day, I muttered. What was that? Nothing. Get out, Caleb. I'm on a deadline. He glared at me. You're selfish, you know that? Always have been. Hoarding your money, hiding down here like a troll. Dad's right about you. He turned to leave, but stopped at the stairs. By the way, Mom said to tell you dinner is at 6. We're celebrating the baby news. Try not to look so miserable. When he was gone, I unlocked the bottom drawer of my desk. Underneath a stack of old tax returns, there was a thick manila envelope. I pulled it out. Inside was the grant deed to the property at 42 Maple Street. Owner Mason Miller. Date: August 14, 2021. I ran my thumb over the embossed seal. 5 years. For 5 years, I had let them treat me like a tenant in my own home. For 5 years, I had swallowed their insults, their demands, their disrespect. Why? Because I loved them. Because I wanted to save my father's dignity. But staring at that paper, listening to the muffled sounds of Caleb and my parents laughing upstairs, laughing about taking my space, my sanctuary, I felt something shift inside me. The lock on my patience was breaking. I didn't know it yet, but the clock was ticking down. They had pushed me to the edge. One more shove, just one more, and I wasn't going to fall. I was going to push back. And when I did, I was going to bring the whole house down. To understand why I didn't just kick them out the moment Caleb threatened me, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the power of guilt, and how a family can weaponize it until you don't even know which way is up. Let's rewind 5 years. I was 24, fresh out of college, working my first junior developer job. I was living in a cheap apartment across town, saving every penny, driving a Honda Civic with a dented bumper. I was proud of my independence. Then came the phone call. It was my mother, Linda. She was hysterical. "It's your father," she sobbed. "He collapsed. We're at St. Mary's." I drove like a maniac. When I got to the hospital, Dad was hooked up to monitors, looking pale and small. It was a minor heart attack, the doctors said. Stress-induced. His blood pressure was through the roof. While he was sleeping, Mom pulled me into the hallway. She looked 10 years older than she had the week before. "Mason," she whispered, her hands shaking. "We're in trouble." "I know, Mom. His heart—" "No," she interrupted. "Not just his heart. The house. We're losing the house." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" She explained it in broken sentences. Dad's retirement bad investments. He had refinanced the house 3 times to cover Caleb's college tuition, which Caleb dropped out of, and to fund a sure-thing business venture that went bust. They hadn't paid the mortgage in 9 months. The bank had sent the foreclosure notice. "The auction is next week," Mom cried. "If he finds out, if he loses the house." The doctor said another shock could kill him. "He defines himself by that house, Mason. It's all he has left." I looked through the glass door at my father. He was a difficult man, stubborn and proud, but he was my dad. I remembered him teaching me to ride a bike in that driveway. I remembered Christmas mornings in that living room. "How much?" I asked. "The bank wants the full balance, or they sell it." I went to a lawyer the next day. I liquidated my entire 401k. I drained my savings account, my college fund I had built for my future master's degree, my house fund for my own future. I took out a hard money loan with an exorbitant interest rate because I didn't qualify for a traditional mortgage that fast. I bought the house. I saved them. But here is where I made the mistake that would haunt me for half a decade. We were sitting in the lawyer's office, signing the final papers. My mother was there, but Dad was still recovering at home. "He can't know," Mom said, gripping my arm. "Mason promised me. If he knows his son bailed him out, if he knows he's living in your house, it will destroy him. His pride is too fragile right now." So we hatched a lie. Terrible, necessary lie. We told Dad that the bank had worked out a restructuring plan. I would move back into the basement and pay rent. That rent would magically equal the exact amount of the new mortgage payment I was making to my own lender. Dad bought it. Or maybe he wanted to buy it because the truth was too painful. "Good," he had said, sitting in his armchair, looking weak but relieved. "It's about time you stepped up and contributed to this family, Mason. You've been out there focusing on yourself for too long." That was the first sting. I had just sacrificed my financial future for him, and he framed it as me finally stepping up. I moved into the basement. I fixed the leaks. I upgraded the electrical panel when it blew out. I paid the property taxes. I paid the insurance. All of it came out of my account, but to Dad, I was just a tenant, a lodger. And slowly, over the years, the dynamic shifted. Because they didn't see the sacrifice, they stopped respecting the person making it. To them, I wasn't the owner. I was the child who never left home. I was the failure who launched and then came crawling back to the nest. Meanwhile, Caleb was the star. Even though he borrowed money from them constantly, he was ambitious. He was going places. I was just there. Which brings us back to the present day, 3 days ago, sitting in that sweltering basement. I finished my code. I pushed the deployment. Then I sat there in the silence, staring at the grant deed. Why am I still doing this? I asked myself. Dad's heart was fine now. He was healthy enough to scream at me for 20 minutes straight. He was healthy enough to play golf every Saturday. I locked the deed back in the drawer and went upstairs for the celebratory dinner. The dining room was decorated with blue and pink streamers. Mom had cooked a roast. My favorite, actually, but she hadn't made it for me. She made it for Caleb. Jessica was there, looking radiant and a little smug. Caleb was at the head of the table, Dad's usual spot, but Dad let him sit there tonight. To the future. Dad raised a glass of wine. To the continuation of the Miller line. To Caleb. Mom chirped. I raised my glass silently. So, Caleb said, carving the roast. Mason and I talked. He's going to clear out the basement by the weekend. I choked on my water. I never agreed to that. The table went silent. Dad lowered his glass. Excuse me? I said I never agreed to that. I repeated, my voice steady. I work down there. I'm not moving to the garage. Mason, Mom said, using her warning voice, don't cause a scene. Not tonight. This is a happy occasion. I'm not causing a scene, Mom. I'm stating a fact. I pay rent for that space. I have a lease. I didn't actually have a written lease, but the verbal agreement was implied. Lease? Dad laughed. You don't have a lease. You have my generosity. You think that piddly amount you pay covers the value of living in this neighborhood? Rents have doubled. Mason, I could rent that basement out for $2,000 a month tomorrow. I pay the mortgage, taxes, and insurance, which is $2,800 a month, I thought. You haven't paid a dime. Then rent it out, I said. See who puts up with the mold I treated last year. Or the flooding when it rains. You ungrateful little. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Jessica jumped. After everything we've done for you? We took you in when you had nowhere to go. I had an apartment, I said. I had a life. I came back to help. Mom kicked me under the table. Hard. Her eyes were pleading. Don't tell him. The secret. I stopped. I looked at her. She was protecting him. Always protecting him. And in doing so, she was throwing me to the wolves. Look, Caleb said, leaning back, picking his teeth. It's simple math, bro. Jessica and the baby need the space. You're a single guy. You can work anywhere. Why do you have to be so difficult? Just go to the garage. Or hey, maybe it's time you moved out? Oh wait, you probably can't afford to, right? Tech market crashing and all. He winked at Jessica. She giggled. That giggle broke something in my chest. It was the sound of complete and utter humiliation. I stood up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor. I'm not hungry, I said. Sit down, Dad barked. We are celebrating your brother. I'm going to my room, I said. If you walk away from this table, Dad threatened, his face turning purple. Don't expect any cake. It was such a childish threat. It was pathetic. I walked away. As I went down the stairs, I heard Caleb say, Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle him. I'll start moving his stuff tomorrow while he's on his gym break. He won't have a choice. I stopped on the stairs. My hand gripped the railing so hard the wood creaked. He's going to move my stuff, my equipment, my servers, my livelihood, tens of thousands of dollars of sensitive electronics. I went into my basement. I didn't turn the AC back on. I sat in the dark. I pulled out my phone. I didn't scroll Instagram. I didn't check my email. I opened my contacts and scrolled down to W. Wyatt. Wyatt was a real estate investor I had met 6 months ago at a networking event. He was a shark. He bought distressed properties, flipped them, or bulldozed them to build condos. He had sent me a letter a while back offering to buy the house for cash, sight unseen, because the lot was zoned for multifamily units. I had told him no back then. It's my family home, I had said. I looked at his number. Then I looked at the ceiling, listening to the muffled laughter of the people who despised me. I didn't call him yet. I needed one more sign. One final proof that there was no saving this. I got that sign the very next morning. The next morning, Wednesday, I had to go into the office for a quarterly review. It was rare for me to drive into the city, but my boss, Mr. Sterling, had requested it. Mason, Mr. Sterling said, shaking my hand across his mahogany desk. Your performance this year has been stellar. You saved the deployment yesterday. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. We're promoting you to lead architect. That comes with a 20% raise and stock options. I stared at the paper. It was a huge jump. It was the kind of money that changed lives. It was validation. Thank you, sir, I said. I won't let you down. I drove home feeling a rare sense of lightness. Maybe, just maybe, I could use this. I was still bargaining. I was still hoping for love. I pulled into the driveway at 4:30 p.m. The first thing I noticed was the garage door was open. The second thing I noticed was the pile on the front lawn. My heart stopped. It looked like a junk heap. A tangled mess of black wires, silver metal, and shattered glass. I parked the car crookedly and ran. Lying in the grass, baking in the direct Arizona sun, was my server rack. My 3 curved monitors were face down in the dirt. One was cracked down the middle. My custom-built PC tower, a machine I had spent 3 months and $5,000 building, was on its side, the glass panel shattered where it had hit a sprinkler head. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I fell to my knees. I touched the metal case of the PC. It was burning hot. The internal components, the GPU, the motherboard, were likely fried from the heat exposure and the impact. This wasn't just stuff. This was my work. This was my tool. This was my property. "Oh, you're home." I looked up. Caleb was standing on the porch, holding a beer. He looked casual, relaxed. "What did you do?" I asked. My voice was so quiet I barely heard it myself. "I told you, bro," he shrugged. "We need the room. You weren't moving fast enough, so I helped you out. Dad said it was okay." "You threw my equipment on the lawn? In 100-degree heat." "It's fine." He waved a hand. "It's just computer stuff. Besides, looking at this junk, you need an upgrade anyway. Maybe now you'll get a real job." I stood up. The rage that filled me wasn't hot. It was cold. It was absolute zero. It was the kind of calm that comes before a murder. "Where is Dad?" I asked. "Inside, watching the game." I walked past Caleb. He tried to clap me on the shoulder. "Don't be mad, Maze. You'll thank me later. The garage is gonna be a sweet man cave for you." I brushed past him. I walked into the living room. Robert was in his chair. Mom was in the kitchen. "You let him do it," I said. Dad didn't look away from the TV. "Your brother needed help. You weren't here. We made an executive decision. That equipment cost $15,000. I said. Dad snorted. "Don't lie, Mason. You don't have that kind of money. And even if it did," Mom chimed in from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. "Family comes first. The baby needs a nursery. You can't put a price on family, Mason." "You destroyed my property," I said, my voice rising. "That is criminal damage." Dad finally looked at me. His eyes were hard. "Criminal? In my house? You want to talk about rules? Here's a rule. As long as you live under my roof, you do what I say. If I say your junk goes on the lawn, it goes on the lawn. If you don't like it, get out." He turned back to the TV. "Now move your car. You're blocking the driveway and Caleb has friends coming over." I stood there for a full minute. I looked at the back of his head. I looked at my mother, who avoided my eyes and went back to chopping carrots. The hope died. The bargaining died. The sun died. The landlord was born. "Okay," I said. I turned around and walked out the front door. "Where are you going?" Caleb called out from the porch. "You gotta move this junk before the HOA complains." I ignored him. I got into my car, backed out, and drove 2 blocks away to a parking lot behind a strip mall. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. First call, Nathan. He was my best friend since college and, conveniently, a real estate attorney. "Mason," Nathan answered. "What's up? How's the new position?" "They destroyed my server," I said. "And they kicked me out. Basically." "What? Who?" "My family." "Nathan, I'm done. I want to execute the nuclear option." Nathan was silent for a second. He knew about the deed. He knew about the situation. He had been begging me to evict them for years. "Are you sure?" Nathan asked. "Once we pull this trigger, there's no going back. It's scorched earth." "Scorched earth," I repeated. "I want them out. Today." "Okay." Nathan's voice shifted into lawyer mode. "You have the deed?" "Yes." "You have the power. What about the eviction notice?" "In Arizona, I have to give 30 days. "Not if you sell it," Nathan said. "If you sell the property, the new owner has different rights, especially if there is no written lease. But more importantly, If you sell it to someone who specializes in cash for keys or rapid vacancies, it's not your problem anymore. I know just the guy, I said. Second call, Wyatt. He answered on the second ring. Mason, to what do I owe the pleasure? Finally ready to talk numbers. I'm ready to sell, I said. Today. Right now. Whoa, Wyatt laughed. Trouble in paradise? I want out. But there's a catch. The house is occupied. My parents and brother are there. They don't know I own it. They think they own it. Wyatt whistled. That's messy. I like messy. Messy usually means a discount. I don't care about the price, I said. I care about the speed. Can you close today? For a cash deal? I can have a cashier's check in an hour. But if I'm taking on squatters, which is what they are if they have no lease and you're selling, I'm deducting the eviction costs. Fine, I said. Meet me at the Starbucks on 4th and Main in 45 minutes. Bring the paperwork. Done. I hung up. I sat in the car and breathed. I felt like I was floating. The fear was gone. The guilt was gone. I drove back to the house. I had to get the deed, my passport, and my dog, Buster. When I pulled up, Caleb was poking at my shattered monitor with his foot. He laughed when he saw me. Back so soon? Ready to apologize to Dad. I walked past him. Move, I said. I went into the house. Dad was still in the chair. I hope you're here to apologize, Dad said. I'm here to pack, I said. Good, he yelled. Pack. See how far you get without us. I went downstairs. I grabbed the deed. I grabbed my birth certificate, my passport, and the hard drives that I had luckily kept in a fireproof safe, not in the PC. I packed a suitcase of clothes. I went back up. I whistled for Buster, my 4-year-old golden retriever. He came trotting out of the kitchen. Where are you taking the dog? Mom asked, looking alarmed. Caleb loves that dog. It's my dog, Mom. I pay the vet bills. I buy the food. He's chipped in my name. You can't take him, Caleb shouted, coming into the hallway. Jessica wants a dog for the baby to grow up with. Get your own dog, I said, snapping the leash onto Buster. I dragged my suitcase to the door. This was it. The moment of truth. Dad stood up. He blocked the doorway. He was a big man, but he looked older now. If you walk out that door with that bag, Dad said, pointing a finger in my face, don't you dare come crawling back when you fail. You are dead to me. You hear me? I disown you. I looked at him. I looked at the man I had saved. The man I had bankrupted myself for. You disown me? I asked calmly. You're damn right. Get out of my house. Your house. I asked. Get out. He screamed, his face turning that dangerous shade of red. Leave and never come back. I looked at Mom. She said nothing. She looked down. I looked at Caleb. He was smirking. I nodded calmly. Okay, I said. Goodbye, Robert. Goodbye, Linda. I didn't call them Mom and Dad. I walked out the door. And take your trash with you, Caleb yelled, kicking a piece of my computer. I put Buster in the passenger seat. I put my suitcase in the back. I looked at the house one last time. It was a nice house. I had put a new roof on it last year. It's a nice asset, I corrected myself. Liquidatable. I drove away. I didn't cry. I turned on the radio. I had an appointment to keep. And my parents were about to have a very, very surprising afternoon. The drive to Starbucks took 10 minutes. But in my head, I was traveling light years away from the person I used to be. The old Mason would have turned the car around. He would have apologized. He would have dragged his broken computer into the garage and slept on a cot just to keep the peace. He would have accepted the abuse because he thought it was the price of belonging. But the old Mason didn't have a $5,000 pile of scrap metal on the lawn. And he didn't have a promotion letter in his pocket proving his worth to the outside world. I arrived at the cafe. Wyatt was already there, sitting at a corner table. He looked out of place among the students and remote workers. He was wearing a sharp navy suit, a Rolex on his wrist, a real one, unlike Caleb's knockoffs, and he had a leather briefcase open on the table. He spotted me and grinned. It was a predatory grin, the smile of a wolf seeing a wounded deer, but right now I needed a wolf. Mason! He stood up and shook my hand. His grip was iron. You look like a man on a mission. I am. I sat down. Do you have the papers? Right here. He slid a stack of documents across the table. Standard purchase agreement. As is condition. Cash deal. 14-day closing is standard. But. He paused, looking at my face. You said today. I want the title transferred today, or as close to today as legally possible. I want to hand you the keys, take the check, and be done. Wyatt tapped his pen on the table. Okay, here's how we do it. We sign a quitclaim deed. You transfer the property to my LLC immediately. I give you the check. My title company records it first thing tomorrow morning. But effectively, the moment you sign and notarize, it's mine. And the occupants? I asked. Wyatt's grin widened. I have a clause for that. Seller transfers possession with unauthorized occupants. Meaning they are my problem. And let me tell you, Mason, I have a very aggressive legal team. I don't do 30-day notices for squatters who destroy property. I do immediate eviction for criminal damage and safety hazards. He pointed to a clause. Is the house damaged? He asked, a knowing glint in his eye. I thought about the server rack on the lawn. There is significant damage to the owner's personal property on the premises, I said legally. Perfect, Wyatt said. That's cause for removal. He pulled out a checkbook. We agreed on $450,000 previously, Wyatt said. Market value is $500,000. But with the squatter situation and the quick close. $400, I said. I just want it gone. Wyatt blinked. He clearly expected me to haggle up, not down. $400, he asked. You're leaving $100,000 on the table. I'm paying $100,000 for my freedom, I corrected him. And for you to handle the confrontation. I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to see them. Done. Wyatt wrote the check so fast I thought the pen would tear the paper. $400,000. He handed me the check. I stared at it. It was more money than my parents had ever seen in one place. It was my reimbursement for the college fund, the mortgage payments, the repairs, the emotional trauma. It was my severance package from the Miller family. We need a notary, I said. My assistant is in the car, Wyatt said. She's a notary. 5 minutes later, it was done. The stamp pressed down on the paper. Thump. That sound was louder than my father's screaming. It was the sound of a gavel. I handed Wyatt the keys. The front door key. The garage key. The mailbox key. They're home right now, I said. My father, Robert. My mother, Linda. My brother, Caleb. And his girlfriend. Do they know I'm coming? Wyatt asked, pocketing the keys. No, I said. They think I just left to cool off. They think they won. Wyatt checked his watch. It's 5:15 p.m. I can be there by 5:45. I'll bring my security team. We usually document the initial walkthrough for insurance purposes. Security team? 2 big guys. Ex-military. Just in case things get heated. I find that people are more polite when there are witnesses with body cams. I stood up. Wyatt, one thing. Yeah. My father. He has a heart condition. Don't kill him. Just get him out. Wyatt nodded, his expression turning serious for a moment. We follow the law, Mason. We're professional. But we are firm. It's not their house anymore. It's mine. I shook his hand. It's all yours. I walked out of the Starbucks. I had a check for $400,000 in my pocket. I had my dog in the car. I had a suitcase of clothes. I was homeless. I was an orphan, effectively, and I had never felt better. I got in my car. I should have driven to a hotel. I should have driven to the airport, but I couldn't resist. I drove to the park at the end of Maple Street. There was a hill there, overlooking the neighborhood. You could see the driveway of number 42. Parked. I rolled down the windows. I waited. I needed to see the end of the movie. From my vantage point on the hill, I watched the sun begin to dip lower in the Arizona sky. The heat waves were still shimmering off the asphalt. At 5:42 p.m., a black Range Rover turned onto Maple Street. Behind it was a white van with Titan Property Management stenciled on the side. Wyatt didn't mess around. I pulled out my phone. I had a security camera app linked to the doorbell and the living room camera, which I had installed to check on Buster when I was working. I realized with a jolt that I hadn't transferred the digital access to Wyatt yet. I opened the app. Connecting. The video feed popped up. Inside the living room, the mood was celebratory. Dad was pouring champagne, probably a bottle I had bought for New Year's. Mom was laughing, holding up a baby onesie Jessica had brought. Caleb was leaning back in my father's recliner, the throne he had just inherited. To the new nursery, Caleb toasted, and to finally having some peace and quiet without the gloomy ghost downstairs. He'll be back, Dad grunted, taking a sip. He always comes back. He has nowhere else to go. But when he does, he's sleeping in the garage. I'm done coddling him. We should change the locks before he gets back, Caleb suggested, just to teach him a lesson. I watched on the tiny screen, a cold smile touching my lips. Oh, the locks are going to be changed, Caleb. Just not by you. On the screen, the doorbell rang. Ding dong. Everyone froze. Is that him? Mom asked nervously. Did he forget his key? I'll handle it, Caleb said, puffing out his chest. I'll tell him he sleeps in the car tonight. Caleb walked to the door. I switched the camera view to the doorbell cam. Caleb swung the door open aggressively. Look, Mason, Dad said. He stopped. Standing on the porch was not Mason. It was Wyatt, looking impeccable in his suit, flanked by two men who looked like they ate concrete for breakfast. Can I help you? Caleb asked, his voice dropping an octave. I'm looking for the occupants of the property, Wyatt said smoothly. Are you a tenant? Tenant? No, I live here. Who are you? My name is Wyatt Sterling. I'm the owner of this house. Caleb laughed. It was a nervous, confused laugh. What? No, you're at the wrong house, buddy. My dad owns this house. Is your father home? Wyatt asked, stepping forward. The two security guards stepped with him. Dad, Caleb yelled, backing up. Some guy is here saying he owns the house. Robert appeared in the hallway, looking annoyed. What is this? Who are you? Mr. Miller? Wyatt asked. Yes. Who are you and why are you blocking my doorway? Mr. Miller, my name is Wyatt. I purchased this property this afternoon. I have the deed right here. Wyatt held up the document. I'm afraid I need to inspect the premises and secure the property. Since there are no lease agreements on file, I'm going to have to ask you to vacate. Dad stared at him. His face went from red to white to purple. Purchased. Dad sputtered. From who? I didn't sell anything. From the owner, Wyatt said. Mason Miller. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavy. It was the sound of a reality crumbling. Mason, Mom whispered from the back of the room. But Mason doesn't own the house. Actually, ma'am, Wyatt said, pulling out a copy of the 5-year-old foreclosure sale record. Mason Miller has held the title since August 2021. He bought it from First National Bank to prevent a foreclosure auction. He has been the sole owner for 5 years. Dad staggered back. He grabbed the doorframe for support. That's a lie, Dad wheezed. He pays rent. He's a tenant. He was your landlord, Wyatt corrected. A very generous one, it seems, but he sold it to me, and I am not generous. Wyatt signaled to his men. Gentlemen, please enter and secure the perimeter. Check for damages. You can't come in here, Dad shouted, finding his voice. This is trespassing. I'm calling the police. Please do, Wyatt smiled. In fact, I insist. It will make the eviction report much easier. Wyatt walked right past Dad into the living room. I watched on my phone as Wyatt looked around with a sneer. He looked at the champagne on the table. He looked at the baby clothes. Nice party, Wyatt said. Pack it up. You have. He checked his watch. Well, Legally, I can give you 24 hours for a cash for keys deal if you leave quietly. If you fight me, I'll have the sheriff here to throw your stuff on the curb in an hour for criminal trespassing." "Trespassing?" Caleb shouted. "We've lived here for 20 years. Not as owners," Wyatt said, cold as ice. "And since Mason sold the property vacant, you are technically intruders." Dad was fumbling with his phone, his hands shaking so badly he dropped it. "I'm calling 911, Dad yelled. "Get out of my house." I sat in my car on the hill, watching the drama unfold on the small screen. It was chaos. It was tragedy. And it was the first time in my life I had ever seen my father truly powerless. He wasn't fighting me anymore. He was fighting the cold, hard reality of the law. And the law didn't care about his pride. The next 45 minutes were a blur of activity on my phone screen. Dad did call the police. That was his fatal mistake. He thought the police were there to protect him, the man of the house, from the intruders. He didn't understand that, in the eyes of the law, he was the intruder. While they waited for the police, Wyatt's security team started securing the assets. This meant they walked through the house, taking photos of everything. One guard went into the kitchen. "Ma'am, please step away from the refrigerator. That is a fixture of the house." "This is my fridge," Mom cried. "Actually," Wyatt interjected, tapping a clipboard. "The purchase agreement includes all appliances." Mason listed them. "Fridge, stove, washer, dryer. They stay." "He sold our appliances?" Caleb screamed. "That thief! His appliances," Wyatt corrected. "Receipts show he bought them in 2022 and 2023. That was true. The old ones had died. I replaced them. Dad had taken credit for arranging it. But I had paid. Then the police arrived. 2 cruisers pulled up. I watched from the hill as officers walked up the driveway, past the pile of my broken computer parts. Inside, Dad met them at the door with a triumphant look. "Officers, thank God. These men broke into my home. Arrest them." Officer Ramirez, I recognized him. He patrolled the neighborhood often. Looked at Wyatt. "Sir, what's going on here?" Wyatt calmly handed over the folder. "Officer, I am the owner of this property. Here is the notarized quitclaim deed signed today. Here is the original grant deed proving the seller, Mason Miller, was the owner. These people are unauthorized occupants who have caused significant property damage." Wyatt pointed to the window. "You can see the destroyed electronics on the lawn. That was the previous owner's property. He sold the house to me because he feared for his safety." Officer Ramirez looked at the papers. He looked at Dad. "Mr. Miller," the officer asked Dad, "is your name on the deed?" "Well, no, but it was my house. My son. He scammed me. He must have forged this. We can verify that downtown," the officer said. "But right now, this deed looks legal. Sir, if you don't own the house, and the owner wants you to leave." "I have rights," Dad shouted. "Squatters' rights. You have to give me 30 days. Wyatt stepped in. "Officer, they destroyed $15,000 of electronics this afternoon. That's a felony criminal damage. I want them removed as a threat to the property." The officer looked at the pile on the lawn. He looked back at Dad. "Did you throw that equipment out, sir?" "It was trash," Dad argued. "It was in my way. It was the owner's property," the officer said sternly. "Sir, this is a civil matter regarding the eviction, but the property damage is criminal. If the owner wants you out, and you're destroying things, I can remove you right now to prevent further damage." Dad looked deflated. He looked at Mom. She was sobbing on the sofa. "You can't do this," Dad whispered. "Where will we go?" Wyatt stepped forward. He wasn't a monster, just a businessman. "I'll give you 2 hours," Wyatt said. "Take your clothes. Take your personal items. Leave the furniture and appliances. If you are gone in 2 hours, I won't press charges for the damage to the computer. If you're not gone." He let the threat hang. The officer nodded. "That sounds generous, sir. Mr. Miller, I suggest you start packing. I watched Dad sink into the chair. He looked broken. The illusion was gone. The lie he had told himself for 5 years, that he was the king of his castle, had evaporated. He was just a man who had bitten the hand that fed him, and now he was starving. I turned off the camera feed. I didn't need to see them pack. I put the car in gear. The sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant purples and oranges. My phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Caleb, you ruined everything. Mom can't stop crying. How could you do this? I didn't reply. I blocked the number. Then a text from Dad. Dad, you are no son of mine. I looked at the message. I typed a reply, my thumb hovering over the send button. I know. A son would have stayed in the basement. A landlord protects his investment. I didn't send it. I deleted it. They didn't deserve my words. They had my house. That was enough of a legacy. I drove away from Maple Street for the last time. I had $400,000, a loyal dog, and a future that was entirely my own. As I hit the highway, heading toward a hotel, I realized something. I wasn't just driving away from a house. I was driving away from a version of myself that I didn't like anymore. The doormat, the invisible banker. I was free. The silence of a hotel room is different from the silence of a home. It's sterile. It's impersonal. It smells like industrial cleaner and starched linens. For most people, it feels lonely. But as I walked into the suite at the Marriott that night, Buster trotting nervously at my heels, that silence felt like a symphony. I closed the heavy door behind me. The lock clicked. That sound, the solid, mechanical thud of a lock that I controlled, was the sweetest thing I had heard in 5 years. I dropped my suitcase. I let Buster off his leash. He immediately jumped onto the king-sized bed, tail wagging, looking at me as if to ask, "Are we allowed to be up here?" "Yeah, buddy," I whispered, scratching behind his ears. "You can go wherever you want. No one is going to kick you off." I walked over to the thermostat. It was set to 72 degrees. I turned it down to 68, just because I could. Just because no one was going to stomp down the stairs and scream at me about the electric bill. I ordered room service, a steak, a bottle of red wine, a bowl of gourmet chicken for Buster. I sat by the window on the 10th floor, looking out over the city lights of Phoenix, and for the first time in a decade, I didn't have a knot in my stomach. But the world outside wasn't ready to let me go just yet. My phone, which I had placed face down on the desk, began to vibrate. It wasn't a text this time. It was a call. It was Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah was my father's older sister. She was the family matriarch, the keeper of secrets, and the enforcer of the family first doctrine. She hadn't called me on my birthday. She hadn't called me when I graduated college. She only called when the boat was rocking. I stared at the screen. Decline. It rang again immediately. Then a text popped up. "Aunt Sarah, pick up the phone, Mason. Your mother is hysterical." I took a sip of wine. The tannins were dry and sharp. I picked up the phone. "Hello, Sarah," I said. Not Aunt. Just Sarah. "Mason." Her voice was a shriek. "Have you lost your mind? I just got off the phone with Linda. She can't even speak. She's crying so hard. She says some thugs threw them out on the street. She says you sold the house." "I did," I said calmly. "I sold my property." "Your property? That is your father's house. He built that life. How dare you pull the rug out from under him like this? Do you have any idea how humiliating this is? The neighbors are watching. All their furniture is inside. They are sitting on the curb. Mason, on the curb. They have a car," I said. "They can go to a hotel, just like I did." "A hotel? With what money?" Sarah snapped. "You know your father's situation. He's on a fixed income. And Caleb? Caleb is an adult." I cut her off. "He's 25. He has a business. Remember? He has a pregnant girlfriend. Surely he can provide for his family." "You are heartless," she hissed. "I always knew there was something cold about you. You're punishing them because you're jealous of your brother. Because he's starting a family and you're alone." "I'm not punishing them, Sarah. I'm evicting them. There's a difference. Punishment implies I care enough to teach them a lesson. Eviction just means I'm done paying for their mistakes. They are your parents. And I was their landlord, I said, my voice hardening. For 5 years I paid every dime. I saved them from foreclosure. And today they destroyed my office, destroyed my livelihood, and told me to get out. So I got out. And I took my house with me. You ungrateful. If you're so worried about them, Sarah, I interrupted, why don't you take them in? You have that big guest house in Scottsdale. Go pick them up. Silence. I knew exactly why. Sarah loved the idea of family, but she hated the reality of my father. She knew he was loud, demanding, and cheap. She knew Caleb was a mooch. That's not the point, she stammered. I don't have the room right now. I have bridge club coming over this weekend and… Goodbye, Sarah, I said. I hung up and blocked her number. The flying monkeys. That's what my therapist used to call them. The enablers sent by the narcissist to drag the victim back into line. But her wings were clipped. I finished my steak, but the adrenaline was still coursing through me. I needed to know. I needed to know what was happening on Maple Street. Not because I wanted to save them, but because I needed to verify that the nightmare was truly over. I called Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins was the neighborhood watch captain. She was 75 years old, sharp as a tack, and lived directly across the street from us. She had always liked me because I was the only one who helped her bring her trash cans in. Hello. Her voice was shaky. Mrs. Higgins, it's Mason. Oh, Mason, she gasped. Oh, honey, are you okay? It's a war zone over here. I'm safe, Mrs. Higgins. I'm at a hotel. Tell me what's happening. Well, she lowered her voice to a whisper. It's the biggest scandal the street has seen since the Jones boy drove his car into the pool in '98. Those big security men. They didn't mess around, Mason. They gave your father 2 hours. Did they leave? Eventually, but not quietly. Your father… Oh, it was hard to watch, Mason. He was screaming at the police. He kept shouting that he was going to sue everyone. He tried to rip the for sale sign the new owner put up out of the ground, but he tripped and fell. I closed my eyes. I could see it. The flailing rage of a man who had lost control. And your mother? She was just sitting on one of those suitcases, crying into her hands. The girlfriend, the young one, she called an Uber about 20 minutes ago. She left, Mason. She took her bags and just left Caleb standing there. I let out a short, humorless laugh. Jessica had lasted exactly 1 hour after the money ran out. And Caleb? He's trying to fit a recliner into the back of your father's sedan. It's not going to fit, honey. He's yelling at your father. They're blaming each other. The whole neighborhood is out on their porches. The police are just standing there with their arms crossed, waiting for them to clear the driveway. Did they take the dog? I asked, a sudden panic gripping me, even though Buster was right next to me. No, honey, you took the dog, remember? I saw you drive off. Oh, Mason, the new owner, that man in the suit? He told the police to tell your father that if they aren't off the property by 8 p.m., everything left on the curb goes to the dump. It's 7:50. I checked my watch. They're shoving clothes into trash bags now, Mrs. Higgins said. It's sad, Mason. I know they treated you poorly. We all heard the yelling. We all saw how you lived in that basement. But seeing them like this… I know, I said softly. It is sad. But they did this to themselves, Mrs. Higgins. I couldn't save them anymore. I know, dear. You take care of yourself. Don't worry about the mail. I'll collect anything that comes for you. Thanks, Mrs. Higgins. I hung up. Jessica was gone. The family was turning on each other. The neighbors were witnessing the collapse of the Miller facade. I lay back on the bed. I should have felt guilty. That's how I was programmed. I was raised to be the shock absorber, the one who took the hits so the family car could ride smoothly. But the shock absorber was broken. And for the first time, I realized that the bumps in the road weren't my fault. I slept for 12 hours. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my bank app. Deposit received, $400,000. Source, Titan Property Management LLC. I stared at the number. It was real. I wasn't just free emotionally. I was liquid. I showered, put on a fresh shirt I had packed, and went down to the hotel lobby. I needed coffee. Real coffee, not the pod stuff in the room. As I sat in the lobby, opening my laptop to start looking for a permanent place to live, my phone buzzed again. It was an email. From my father. Subject, you have killed us. My finger hovered over the delete button, but morbid curiosity won out. I opened it. Mason, I am writing this from a Motel 6 off the highway. It is infested with roaches. Your mother hasn't stopped crying all night. Caleb is sleeping in the bathtub because there are only 2 beds. Jessica left him. She said she couldn't be with a loser who lied about his assets. I hope you are happy. You have destroyed your brother's family before it even started. You have humiliated your father after a lifetime of hard work. We have nothing. The furniture is gone. The photos are gone. Wyatt locked the doors at 8:01 p.m. You think you are smart? You think you won? You will rot for this. You stole my house. You tricked me. I am going to find a lawyer. I am going to sue you for everything you have. Don't think this is over. Do not contact us unless it is to beg for forgiveness and transfer the money you stole. That, I read it twice. Stole. Tricked. Rot. Not a single word of accountability. Not a single, I'm sorry we treated you like a servant. Not a single thank you for the 5 years of free housing. He was rewriting history even as he sat in the ruins of his own making. He truly believed he was the victim. I hit reply. Robert 1. I didn't steal the house. I bought it when you failed to pay the mortgage in 2021. I have the receipts. 2. I didn't trick you. I protected you from the shame of bankruptcy. My mistake was letting you believe the lie for too long. 3. You aren't going to find a lawyer. Lawyers cost money, and they require a case. You have neither. 4. Jessica didn't leave because of me. She left because Caleb is a 25-year-old child with no job and no prospects, and the illusion of wealth was the only thing keeping her there. I am not contacting you to beg. I am contacting you to say this is the last time you will hear from me. If you or Caleb come near me, near my workplace, or harass me again, I will file for a restraining order. I have the money to enforce it. You do not. Good luck with the Motel 6. It's still better than the homeless shelter you would have been in 5 years ago if I hadn't stepped in. Mason. I hit send. Then I blocked his email address. I sat there in the lobby, shaking slightly. It was done. The cord was cut. Excuse me? I looked up. A young woman in a business suit was standing there, holding a coffee cup. Are you using that chair? She pointed to the empty armchair across from me. No, I said. Go ahead. She sat down. She looked stressed. She had a pile of papers on the table. Rough morning, I asked, surprising myself. I usually avoided strangers. She sighed. You have no idea. My landlord just raised my rent by 30%. I have to move by the end of the month or I'm on the street. I looked at her. I looked at the $400,000 balance on my phone screen. I'm sorry, I said. That's terrible. Yeah, well, she shrugged. That's life, right? You work hard, you follow the rules, and someone else pulls the strings. Not always, I said. I looked out the window at the bright Arizona morning. Sometimes you find a pair of scissors. She looked at me, confused. I just smiled. I spent the rest of the week handling the logistics of a new life. I bought a new top-tier gaming PC, better than the one they destroyed. I bought 3 new 4K monitors. I rented a luxury 2-bedroom condo in a high-rise downtown, close to my company's satellite office, so I wouldn't have to be remote all the time if I didn't want to. It had a gym. It had a pool. It had security. And most importantly, it had a guest policy that required my authorization for anyone to enter. Caleb tried to call me from a different number on Friday. I listened to the voicemail. Mason, come on, man. It's bad. Dad's blood pressure is up again. Mom is selling her jewelry. Look, I'm sorry about the computer. okay? I'll pay you back when my crypto takes off. Just send us like 10 grand. Just to get an apartment. We're family, bro. You can't do this. I'll pay you back when my crypto takes off. I deleted the voicemail. They were drowning, and they were furious that I wasn't letting them use my head as a flotation device anymore. But the hardest part wasn't the anger. It was the quiet moments. The moments when I was setting up my new apartment, hanging my clothes in a walk-in closet that was all mine, and I would suddenly think, I should call Mom and tell her about this view. Then I would remember. The mom I wanted to call didn't exist. The mom I wanted to call would have protected me from Dad. She would have defended my property. She wouldn't have watched silently while I was kicked out. I was grieving people who were still alive. But as the days turned into weeks, the grief began to fade, replaced by a strange, exhilarating sensation. Self-respect. 3 months later, the desert heat had started to break, giving way to the crisp, golden autumn of Arizona. I sat on the balcony of my condo on the 15th floor. Buster was asleep at my feet, twitching in a dream, probably chasing rabbits he would never catch. I took a sip of my coffee. It was high-end, freshly ground beans. Not the cheap instant stuff Dad insisted on buying in bulk. My phone rang. It was Nathan, my lawyer friend. "Hey, counselor," I answered. "What's the verdict? You're going to love this." Nathan's voice was rich with amusement. "So, I just got off the phone with the legal aid attorney representing your father. They actually found a lawyer?" I was surprised. Legal aid. Free services for seniors. Anyway, they tried to file a suit for wrongful eviction and elder abuse. They claimed you had a verbal contract for life tenancy and that you maliciously sold the property to circumvent tenant laws. And I sent them the stack of receipts, the tax payments, the emails where your father explicitly referred to you as a lodger and a tenant who needed to follow his rules. And the piece de resistance, the police report from the day of the eviction where your father admitted on body cam that he thought he owned the house and you were just staying there. Nathan laughed. The legal aid guy dropped the case. He told your dad he has zero standing. If they sue, they'll be countersued for your legal fees and for the damage to the computer, which we still haven't pressed charges for. It's dead, Mason. They can't touch you. Where are they? I asked. I hadn't asked in weeks. Living in a one-bedroom apartment in Mesa, a rough part of town. Caleb is working at an Amazon warehouse. Night shift. Caleb? Working manual labor. Apparently, hunger is a great motivator. And your dad? He's greeting at Walmart. Part-time. I looked out at the city. My father, the man who prided himself on being the king of his castle, greeting strangers at a big-box store. Caleb, the entrepreneur, packing boxes for minimum wage. "Do you feel bad?" Nathan asked, his voice softening. "No," I said honestly. "I feel balanced. The scales are finally even. They are living the life they can afford. I am living the life I earned. That's the spirit. Hey, drinks on Friday. To celebrate the dismissal." "You're on." I hung up. It wasn't just the legal victory. My career had skyrocketed. Without the constant stress of walking on eggshells at home, without the background noise of family drama, my focus had returned with a vengeance. I had led the new architecture overhaul for my company. Mr. Sterling had hinted at another bonus coming in December. I had money in the bank. I had a portfolio of investments. I had a car that didn't smell like old gym socks. Caleb used to borrow my car and leave his gym bag in it, but the real test came 2 weeks later. I was at the grocery store, a nice one, the kind with an olive bar and a cheese sommelier. I was pushing my cart, debating between 2 types of aged cheddar, when I saw him, Robert, my father. He was wearing his Walmart vest. He wasn't working, he was shopping. He looked 20 pounds lighter. His skin was gray. He was pushing a small handbasket that contained a loaf of white bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a pack of generic hot dogs. He looked beaten. He looked old. I froze. My instinct was to run, to abandon my cart and bolt for the exit. But then I remembered who I was. I was Mason Miller, the lead architect, the homeowner, the man who walked away. I didn't run. I stood my ground. He turned the corner and saw me. His eyes widened. He looked at my cart, full of fresh produce, steaks, wine, expensive cheese. He looked at my clothes, a fitted button-down, clean jeans, nice watch. Then he looked at his own basket. For a moment, I thought he would scream. I braced myself for the public scene. Here it comes. The yelling, the accusations. But he didn't scream. His shoulders slumped. He looked down at his shoes. He looked ashamed. "Mason," he croaked. His voice was rusty, like a gate that hadn't been opened in years. "Robert," I nodded. You look good." "I am good." He shuffled his feet. "Your mother, she misses you. She asks about you." "She knows my number," I said. "She hasn't used it." "She's afraid," he admitted. "She's afraid of me. Afraid I'll get mad if she calls you." "That sounds like a choice she's making," I said. "Just like she chose to watch you throw my life on the lawn." He winced. "It's hard, Mason. The apartment, the neighbors are loud. Caleb hates the warehouse. My back hurts standing on that concrete floor all day." He was fishing. He was casting the line, hoping I would bite, hoping the old guilt would kick in. "Oh, poor Dad, let me write you a check. Let me fix it." I looked at him, and I felt nothing but a distant pity, like seeing a stranger with a flat tire on the side of the road. "You hope they have AAA, but you aren't stopping." "That sounds difficult," I said neutrally. "But you're a resourceful man, Robert. You always said hard work builds character. I'm sure you'll figure it out." I used his own words against him. "You'll figure it out." The phrase he had used on me 1,000 times when I needed help. His face crumbled. He realized the bank was closed. Permanently. I guess I deserved that," he whispered. It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get. And it wasn't enough. "Yes," I said. "You did." I pushed my cart past him. I didn't look back. I went to the checkout, paid for my groceries, and walked out into the sunlight. As I loaded my bags into my new car, a Tesla Model S I had treated myself to, I realized that the revenge wasn't the eviction. It wasn't the police kicking them out. It wasn't the Motel 6. The revenge was this: I was happy. I was thriving without them. For years, they had made me feel like I was the parasite, the burden. But the truth was, they were the parasites. And now that the host had detached them, I was flourishing, and they were withering. I drove home, singing along to the radio. When I got to my condo, I made a sandwich, roast beef with that aged cheddar. I sat on the balcony and watched the sunset. My phone pinged. A notification from YouTube. My story, the one I had posted anonymously about the eviction, had gone viral. Thousands of comments. People cheering for me. People sharing their own stories of toxic families. I realized I wasn't alone. There was a whole army of us, the scapegoats, the invisible children, the ones who broke the cycle. I picked up Buster and put him on my lap. "We did it, boy," I told him. "We made it." He licked my face. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in violent streaks of red. But in my world, everything was calm. I had lost a family, but I had found myself. And that was a trade I would make again in a heartbeat. Thank you for staying with me until the end of this journey. It wasn't an easy story to tell, and I know it wasn't easy to hear. If there is one thing I want you to take away from my experience, it is this: financial abuse is real abuse. Just because it doesn't leave bruises doesn't mean it isn't violent. When someone uses your guilt, your love, or your desire for approval to control your resources and destroy your future, that is not family. That is predation. We are often taught that blood is thicker than water, that we must tolerate toxicity simply because we share DNA. That is a lie. Family is a title that is earned through respect, support, and love. If those things are missing, you are under no obligation to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Setting boundaries, even extreme ones like eviction, is not an act of cruelty. It is an act of survival. You have the right to your own space, your own money, and your own peace. I want to hear from you. What is the one boundary you wish you had set sooner in your life? Or, if you agree that sometimes walking away is the only option, just comment the word good below. It helps me know that this message reached the right people. Stay strong, protect your peace, and remember you hold the keys to your own life. Don't let anyone else change the locks.